A new face at St. Michael's. The rusty wrought iron gates of St. Michael's creaked open, grudgingly admitting a small, beat-up Fiat. Sunlight glinted off the silver crucifix hanging from the rearview mirror as the car bumped along the gravel driveway. Sister Agnes, a young woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, took a deep breath. The air, thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, felt both foreign and familiar. Chet the Tank Thompson leaned against the ancient oak near the chapel, a smirk playing on his lips. Marco the Brains Bellini, perched beside him, squinted. Fresh meat, Chet muttered, adjusting his Letterman jacket. And a nun, no less. This is going to be epic. Marco, ever the strategist, tapped his chin. Patience, Chet. We need to assess the situation. See what we are dealing with. Sister Agnes emerged from the Fiat, a small suitcase in hand. She surveyed the imposing Gothic architecture of St. Michael's with an expression of serene acceptance. Chet nudged Marco. Did you see her? She's practically glowing. Bet she cries during Disney movies. He chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. Her first theology class was held in a sun-drenched room overlooking the manicured gardens. The students, a mix of bored jocks and earnest scholars, shuffled in, their energy a palpable contrast to the quiet calm that radiated from Sister Agnes. She stood at the lectern, her hands clasped lightly in front of her, her blonde hair tucked neatly under her veil. Welcome, she said, her voice soft but clear, carrying to every corner of the room. I am Sister Agnes, and I am honored to be your guide through the mysteries of faith. Chet, seated at the back with Marco, rolled his eyes. Mysteries of faith? Sounds thrilling, he whispered sarcastically. Marco just watched Sister Agnes, his expression unreadable. Sister Agnes began to speak, not of dogma or doctrine, but of compassion, empathy, and the power of forgiveness. She spoke of finding strength in vulnerability and understanding in doubt. Her words, laced with quiet conviction, seemed to weave a spell, silencing the whispers and drawing even the most cynical into her orbit. Chet shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He'd expected a stern, intimidating figure, ripe for mockery. Instead, he found himself strangely captivated by the genuine warmth in her eyes. Marco, noticing Chet's unease, smirked. Looks like someone's losing their edge, he murmured, just loud enough for Chet to hear. Chet glared at him but remained silent, his usual bravado momentarily subdued. Sister Agnes continued her lecture, oblivious to the undercurrents swirling in the room, her gentle voice filling the space with a quiet, compelling power. Pranks and patience. Monday morning dawned with the promise of mischief. Chet, fueled by lukewarm coffee and an inflated sense of self-importance, directed Marco and Tony towards Sister Agnes's classroom before she arrived. Books. All gone. And texts. Plenty of 'em, Chet commanded, cracking his knuckles. Marco, ever the strategist, had procured industrial-strength thumbtacks, gleaming menacingly under the fluorescent lights. Sister Agnes entered to find her desk bare, her carefully arranged theology texts vanished. A faint metallic glint betrayed the text nestled on her chair. She paused, a delicate smile playing on her lips. Well, good morning to you too, she said to the empty room, her voice echoing slightly. She produced a small, well-worn Bible from her satchel. Looks like we are going back to basics today, gentlemen. A refreshing change. The first tech prank resulted in her perching on the edge of the desk, one leg swinging, as she launched into a lecture about the Gospel of Mark. The missing books yielded a surprisingly engaging impromptu session where she quoted scripture from memory, referencing relevant historical contexts. Chet, watching from the back, shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't going as planned. She's enjoying it, Chet grumbled during lunch, picking at his Salisbury steak. Marco's eyes gleamed. We need escalation, Chet. Something she can't ignore. He proposed replacing the chop with lead bomb, setting the clock forward an hour, and subtly altering the lyrics of the hymn sheets to something less pious. The lead bomb resulted in Sister Agnes drawing on the blackboard with a confused expression, then dabbing the sleek substance on her lips. My, what a thoughtful gift, she remarked, a hint of amusement in her voice. The clock change led to a brief moment of panic as students realized the error, followed by Sister Agnes cheerfully declaring an unscheduled 10-minute break. The altered hymn sheets had her pausing mid-song, a flicker of something unreadable in her blue eyes, before she simply continued singing the correct lyrics, her voice strong and clear. Chet was reaching his breaking point. The lack of reaction, the almost serene acceptance, was infuriating. He needed to break her, to see some flicker of annoyance, some sign that their antics were having an effect. He turned to Marco, his face flushed. We need something big. Public challenge. The projector would, painting a faded rectangle onto the wall behind Sister Agnes. The agenda, the problem of evil. A subject practically begging for Chet's particular brand of disruption. He sprawled in the last row, legs stretched, his usual acolytes attending. Marco, ever the provocateur, smirked, a glint of anticipation in his eyes. Sister Agnes, either unaware or unconcerned, straightened her spectacles. The presence of suffering often presents a profound test of belief, she began, her tone clear and caring. If an omnipotent and benevolent God exists, what accounts for wickedness? A derisive snort echoed from the rear. Maybe because the whole God thing is a fairy tale? A wave of discomfort rippled through the room. Students fidgeted, avoiding glances. Sister Agnes paused, her gaze drawn to Chet. Her expression remained unruffled. A compelling assertion, Mr. Thompson. Care to expand upon it? Chet preened. He thrived on attention. Expand. It's obvious. If this God's so powerful, why natural disasters? Why childhood illnesses? Why does the dining hall inflict that mystery concoction on us every Tuesday? A few stifled giggles escaped his followers. Sister Agnes brought her fingertips together. Undeniably significant questions, Chet. Though might they not be somewhat simplistic interpretations of a deeply complex issue? Theodicy, the endeavor to reconcile divine goodness with the presence of evil, has preoccupied theologians for ages. Marco leaned in, eyes bright. He hadn't anticipated the nun engaging so directly. Intriguing. Chet, however, grew visibly agitated. He detested being outmaneuvered, even if he couldn't quite grasp why. So, you're saying God allows awful things to happen for reasons? He drawled, heavy with sarcasm. Sounds like a convenient excuse to me. I suggest that faith often necessitates grappling with challenging concepts, Chet. It's not about possessing all the definitive answers, but about seeking them with an earnest heart and an inquisitive mind. She paused, her focus sharp. Perhaps you could offer us your own resolution to the problem of suffering? I'm sure we would all find your perspective valuable. Silence descended, broken only by the projector's steady drone. Chet's face deepened in color. He hadn't counted on being singled out. He flicked a glance at Marco, who merely arched a brow, a silent goad. Chet was cornered. He could either retreat and appear weak, or escalate his foolishness. Fine, he beat out. If I were God, I wouldn't permit any bad stuff. Done. Solved. Sister Agnes offered a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Such a benevolent autocracy might appear tempting, Chet. But where would free will find its place in your system? And what of the invaluable lessons learned in overcoming hardship? She moved from behind the lectern, her dark habit swaying gently. However, I accept your challenge. Let us debate this fully, Chet. After class. My office. You, me, and the heart of evil. Come prepared. A demonstration of faith and skill. So, Mr. Thompson, Sister Agnes said, her voice cutting through the muttering that followed the end of class. You still seem unconvinced. Chet, lounging back in his chair, puffed out his chest. Marco Bellini snickered beside him, a sound like a rusty hinge. Unconvinced that a slip of a thing like you knows anything about self-defense? Yeah, you could say that. Sister Agnes merely smiled, a serene expression that infuriated Chet more than any insult could. Perhaps a practical demonstration would be more persuasive than mere words. Tomorrow, after classes, in the gymnasium. I will demonstrate the principles we discussed. Chet's smirk widened. He exchanged a glance with Marco, who raised an eyebrow, a silent question hanging in the air. A demonstration? Against who, sister? Last I checked, the punching bags don't talk back. I'm sure we can find volunteers, Sister Agnes replied, her eyes twinkling mischievously. She gathered her books, the silence in the room suddenly thick with anticipation. Consider it extra credit for those who are willing to learn. As Sister Agnes left the classroom, a low hum of excitement rippled through the student body. Chet, despite his bravado, felt a prickle of unease. He hadn't expected her to call his bluff. She's bluffing, right? He muttered to Marco, who was already scrolling through his phone, no doubt spreading the news. Maybe, Marco said, his eyes glinting with an unreadable light. Or maybe the old girl's got a trick or two up her sleeve. Either way, this is going to be epic. By dinner, the entire campus was buzzing. Rumors flew faster than cafeteria trays on a Friday night. Some said Sister Agnes was a former MMA fighter in disguise. Others claimed she had secretly trained with Shaolin monks. The truth, of course, was far more interesting, but no one knew that yet. Chet, basking in the attention, pretended to be unfazed, even though he was starting to sweat a little. He spent the evening in the weight room, pumping iron with a manic intensity, trying to convince himself that a little nun stood no chance against the tank Thompson. But deep down, a seed of doubt had been planted, and it was growing faster than his biceps. The gymnasium showdown. The gymnasium thrummed with a nervous energy, a low, buzzing anticipation that vibrated through the polished floorboards and up into the bleachers packed with students. News of the impending showdown had spread like wildfire. Even Professor Davies, usually glued to his dusty tomes, stood near the basketball hoops, spectacles perched precariously on his nose. Chet, flanked by Marco, swaggered into the center of the court, cracking his knuckles. A sneer twisted his lips as he surveyed the crowd. "All right, listen up," he bellowed, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. "Let's see what this little nun's got." Sister Agnes emerged from the side door, her usual calm demeanor unwavering. But instead of her familiar habit, she wore a crisp white GI. A collective gasp rippled through the gymnasium. She calmly tied a black belt around her waist. "Surprised?" she asked, her voice carrying easily despite Chet's bluster. "Many years ago, before I answered a different calling, I trained extensively in karate. My sensei believed in discipline, respect, and the responsible use of power. Qualities, I might add, that seem to be lacking in some individuals. She fixed Chet with a gaze that could melt glaciers. Marco, standing slightly behind Chet, whistled softly, a flicker of genuine admiration in his eyes. He'd always respected intelligence, and Sister Agnes clearly possessed it in spades. He nudged Chet. "Maybe you should reconsider, pal. That's a serious belt." Chet shrugged him off, his bravado momentarily shaken. He swallowed hard, forcing a grin. "A black belt. So what? I bench pressed twice her weight." But his voice lacked its usual conviction, the words sounding hollow even to his own ears. He shuffled his feet, suddenly aware of the scrutiny of the crowd, the unsettling silence that had fallen over the gymnasium. Sister Agnes bowed respectfully. "This isn't about brute strength, Chet. It's about control, focus, and knowing how to defend yourself." She adopted a fighting stance, her movements fluid and graceful. "Are you ready to demonstrate your self-defense skills?" Chet hesitated, his eyes darting around the gym. The sea of faces blurred into a single, judging mass. His initial confidence had evaporated, replaced by a cold knot of dread in his stomach. He had expected a pushover, an easy victory. Now, staring at the focused intensity in Sister Agnes's eyes, he realized he might have made a terrible mistake. This wouldn't be the walkover he had envisioned. Unexpected strength. Chet roared, a sound more akin to a constipated walrus than a fearsome warrior. He lunged, fist a meaty projectile aimed squarely at Sister Agnes's face. The air rushed past her ear as she swayed, a willow in a hurricane, the punch whistling harmlessly by. Chet, fueled by cheap beer and a lifetime of unearned confidence, stumbled forward, his own momentum betraying him. A gasp rippled through the onlookers. Marco, perched on the hood of his souped-up Civic, adjusted his glasses, a flicker of something akin to awe momentarily eclipsing his usual sneer. He hadn't expected that. Sister Agnes, now behind Chet, placed a hand, surprisingly firm, on his broad back. It wasn't a push, not exactly. More like a guidance. A subtle redirection of his own clumsy energy. He felt himself tilting, the world blurring into a dizzying kaleidoscope of asphalt and jeering faces. "Whoa! What the?" Chet sputtered, flailing for purchase. He landed with a pathetic thud, sprawling on the cracked pavement like a beached whale. Dust and grit clung to his expensive leather jacket. The laughter was immediate, brutal, and amplified by the sudden silence that had preceded his fall. Sister Agnes stood over him, a serene expression on her face. "Perhaps," she said, her voice calm amidst the cacophony, "a little less enthusiasm next time, Mr. Thompson?" Chet, face reddening beneath the grime, scrambled to his feet. His usual bluster seemed to have deserted him, replaced by a confused, almost childlike anger. "That was lucky," he mumbled, avoiding her gaze. "You got lucky." Marco hopped off the car, a calculating glint in his eyes. He sauntered over, a picture of nonchalant amusement. "Lucky? Chet, my friend, you just got served by a nun." He punctuated the word nun with a theatrical shudder. Chet shot him a venomous look. "Shut it, Marco. This isn't over." He glared at Sister Agnes, who simply raised an eyebrow in response. He balled his fist again, but the certainty was gone, replaced by a hesitant unease. The laughter, the humiliation, it all coalesced into a burning frustration. He wanted to hit something, anything, but the thought of facing that calm, almost pitying gaze again stopped him cold. Defeat and humiliation. The air crackled with anticipation. Chet, face flushed crimson, lumbered forward, swinging the metal pipe like a deranged windmill. Sister Agnes stood serenely, her blue eyes focused, radiating an almost unnerving calm. Marco, perched on a nearby bench, smirked, already picturing Chad's victory parade. Chad roared, bringing the pipe down. A blur of white habit flashed. Sister Agnes moved with impossible speed, a precise chop deflecting the pipe harmlessly away. Before Chad could react, she spun, her open palm connecting with his wrist, sending a jolt that made him yelp and drop the pipe. It clattered uselessly on the pavement. Marco's smirk faltered. Two of Chad's cronies surged forward, emboldened by his initial bluster. Sister Agnes didn't even pause. A swift kick to the knee of the first sent him sprawling, clutching his leg and groaning. The second hesitated, suddenly unsure. Sister Agnes seized the opportunity, grabbing his arm and executing a flawless hip throw. He landed with a thud, all bravado instantly extinguished. Chad, recovered from his initial shock, lunged again, fists clenched. This time, Sister Agnes sidestepped, hooking her leg behind his. Chad, off balance, tumbled forward, landing face first in the dirt. Silence descended. Then, a ripple of applause broke out. It grew into a roar. Students, faculty, even a few groundskeepers, were cheering, their faces alight with surprised admiration. Chad pushed himself up, spitting dirt. Humiliation burned hotter than any physical pain. He looked around at the laughing faces, the clapping hands, and felt a wave of shame wash over him. Marco, his face now pale, avoided his gaze. Sister Agnes approached, her expression gentle but firm. "Chad," she said, her voice carrying clearly over the dissipating applause, "true strength lies not in dominance, but in compassion." She extended a hand to help him up. He flinched, knocking her hand away. "Just leave me alone," he muttered, his voice thick with resentment. He turned and stalked away, his defeated friends trailing behind him, the cheers of the crowd a mocking soundtrack to his retreat. Marco lingered for a moment, a strange mixture of envy and grudging respect in his eyes as he glanced at Sister Agnes before hurrying to catch up with Chad. Forgiveness and understanding. Sister Agnes extended a hand, her face serene, untouched by the brief skirmish. "Chad," she said, her voice surprisingly gentle. "Let me help you up." He hesitated, his bravado deflating like a punctured balloon. The laughter of Marco and the others stung more than her swift kicks. He took her hand, surprised by the strength in her grip. She pulled him to his feet with ease. "Are you hurt?" she asked, concern etched on her brow. Chad mumbled, "No, just surprised." He avoided her gaze, focusing on a scuff mark on his expensive leather shoes. I'm sorry, sister. I didn't mean, well, I did, but," he trailed off, his usual confidence replaced by a rare vulnerability. Marco snorted softly, earning a glare from Sister Agnes. "Chad, apologize properly," she instructed, her tone firm but kind. Chad shuffled his feet. "Okay, look, sister. I'm really sorry. We were just being stupid. I was being stupid." He finally met her eyes, a flicker of sincerity visible. I guess I just wanted to get a reaction. To prove something." "Prove what, Chad?" Sister Agnes prompted. He sighed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "I don't know, okay? That I'm tough? That people notice me? I don't know. It's just, sometimes I feel like nobody sees me unless I'm doing something loud." A hush fell over the group. Even Marco seemed taken aback by Chad's confession. The air, previously thick with testosterone and antagonism, now vibrated with a hesitant vulnerability. Sister Agnes nodded slowly. Chat, respect isn't earned through intimidation. It's earned through kindness, through understanding, through recognizing the inherent worth in everyone. She turned her attention to the others, her gaze unwavering. And that goes for all of you. One by one, the other bullies lowered their heads. Even Marco, his usual smirk absent, looked ashamed. We are sorry too, sister, mumbled one of the younger boys, his voice barely audible. Another added, "Yay, we didn't really think it through." Marco, after a moment of internal debate, stepped forward. All right, he said, his usual sarcasm replaced with a grudging sincerity. We messed up. And, sister, you're smarter than we gave you credit for. A compliment, of sorts, delivered with a hint of resentment. Sister Agnes smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached her eyes. Thank you, Marco. And I believe you all have the potential to be so much more than bullies. Choose kindness, choose understanding, and you might be surprised at the person you become. She clapped her hands together. Now, I believe some of you have classes to get to. A lasting legacy. The waiting list for Sister Agnes's summer theology course snaked out of the classroom and down the hallway. Word had spread like wildfire. The karate nun was actually brilliant. Students who'd scoffed at the idea of dusting off the good book were now clamoring for a seat. Even Chet, the Tank Thompson, showed up, his usual sneer replaced with something that looked suspiciously like eagerness. Marco, ever the opportunist, had managed to snag a spot near the front. He leaned back, a smug grin playing on his lips as he watched Chet awkwardly squeeze into a desk clearly designed for someone half his size. Enjoying the spiritual enlightenment, Chet, he whispered, the sarcasm dripping from his tone. Chet glared, his face reddening. Shut it, Marco. Just trying to broaden my horizons. Sister Agnes, unfazed by the packed room, began her lecture on forgiveness. Her voice, though soft, resonated with an undeniable authority. She spoke of empathy, of understanding the pain that drove people to cruelty. Chet fidgeted, his usual bravado seemingly absent. He actually looked like he was listening. After class, as students buzzed with newfound philosophical musings, Chet approached Sister Agnes. Sister, he mumbled, kicking at the floor. That stuff about forgiveness, it's powerful. Sister Agnes smiled gently. It is, Chet. But it requires courage. Marco, lurking nearby, scoffed. Courage. Chet. Please. Chet whirled on him, fists clenched, but Sister Agnes intervened. Marco, perhaps you could use some courage as well, she said, her voice calm but firm. She then turned back to Chet. Think about it, Chet. Forgiveness isn't about absolving someone of their actions, it's about freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. The summer flew by. The campus, once simmering with petty rivalries and bullying antics, felt different. Lighter. Students were actually talking to each other, debating theological concepts, even helping each other with homework. Then came the day of Sister Agnes's departure. A small crowd gathered outside St. Michael's. Chet, looking uncharacteristically subdued, stood at the back. As Sister Agnes emerged, a hush fell over the group. I leave St. Michael's, she said, her gaze sweeping across the faces before her, with a heart full of hope. Remember, kindness is not weakness, and forgiveness is not surrender. They are acts of strength. She paused, her eyes lingering on Chet for a moment. Carry that strength with you. With a final nod, she turned and walked away, leaving behind a lasting legacy of respect, forgiveness, and a campus slowly, tentatively, transforming. Marco watched her go, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Chad just stood there, his fists unclenched, a strange mix of regret and determination etched on his face.